Factoring trinomials is something that comes up in this chapter. So let's look at what that means. Let's say I start with an equation, something like x squared minus 3x plus 2 equals 0. And our goal is find x. We're going to do a little trick here. We notice that there are three terms, which is an odd number of terms. So we're going to convert this into four terms. Now, negative 3 can conveniently be written as negative 1 minus 2, which means that negative 3x can be written as negative x minus 2x. If I do that, I can rewrite this equation in this form. And now I have four terms, which means that I can make two groups of two terms, and I can factor each of these. The GCF of x squared and x is x. So if I factor out an x, I'm left with an x minus 1. The GCF of 2x and 2 is 2. So I factor out 2, and again, I'm left with x minus 1. And notice here, because it's a negative, this has to be negative to make sure this is a positive. And now I have two terms. And in these two terms, I notice that this particular term is a GCF, which means I can factor it out again. And when I do that, that's what I end up with. And now I know this is a product of two things that is 0. So I have either x minus 1 equals 0 or x minus 2 equals 0. This gives me x is 1 and this gives me x is 2. So the solution is x is 1 or x is 2. Okay. Now the next goal, this is how the method works. The next goal is to figure out how did I find that this is how I need to rewrite negative 3x. So let's look at another example. Now let's say I have a little more complicated example, something like x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Now negative 5x can be written as negative x minus 4x. It can also be written as negative 2x minus 3x. So which of these is going to work? So it turns out that this one is the one that's going to work. And the reason is, if you notice, the numbers here, negative 1 times negative 4 is 4. But negative 2 times negative 3 is 6. And the 6 appears here. So there is a connection. So let's see how this works out. X squared minus 2x minus 3x plus 6 equals 0. Again, I have two groups of 2. I look at the GCF, that's x here. The GCF here is negative 3. Once again, I have a common term. So the GCF is x minus 2, which can be factored out. And then this gives me x is 2 or x is 3. So here's the rule. Is you're finding two numbers that add to negative 5 and have a product of 6. Okay, negative 5 is this number here. 6 is this number here. Let's look at another example. Let's say I have x squared minus 7x plus 12 equals 0. So I'm finding two numbers such that their sum is negative 7 and their product is 12. Now it's easier to look at products because the only possible ways in which I can have a product of 12 is if it's 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4, and that's it. And if you look at the sum here, the sum is 13, 8, and 7. So this is the one we are interested in. Also remember that I can also have product of two negative numbers and so on. So that's why I know that that's the pair that is going to work for me. So I get x squared minus 3x minus 4x plus 12 equals 0. I have two groups of 2 yet again. GCF is x and GCF is 4. I have this common term, so I get x minus 4, x minus 3 equals 0, x equals 4, or x equals 3. That's my solution. Now there's one more special case. The special case is, let's say I have 2x squared minus 3x plus 2. Now I need the sum to be negative 3, but I need the product to be, let's make this negative 2. Sorry. And I need the product in this case, it's not just negative 2, but I need to multiply it by this number here. That's because we have 2x squares. So the product needs to be negative 4. Now one way to do that would be the numbers negative 4 and 1. Because negative 4 plus 1 gives me negative 3. And negative 4 times 1 gives me negative 4. So I go ahead and I do that. 4x plus x minus 2 equals 0. Sorry. Now the GCF here, instead of just being x like in the previous case, is going to be 2x. Now they have nothing in common, which means the GCF is 1. Once again, I have this common. So if you do this factoring correctly, you're always going to end up having these two terms being the same. So you get x minus 2, 2x plus 1 equals 0. This gives you x equals 2, and this gives you x equals negative 1/2. So that's the method for factoring trinomial. You're finding the sum, numbers who add up to this number, and whose product is this times this. So if it's only x squared, you can just look at this number, because any number times 1 is itself. But if it's not x squared, you got to incorporate that into your